Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 9th study class for Neville Goddard. And it is from his book, The Law and the Promise. Now, today we're going to continue on. I'm not sure what copy you have if you have one, but we are in the chapter called Attitudes, chapter 12. And we are going to continue on with where we got up to after session number 8. And so for those of you that haven't been here, what I do is read a bit, and sometimes someone else reads if they've got the book. And then we will go through what's been read. And then, you know, you're welcome to ask questions. But it's about really learning and listening to Neville's teachings so that we can apply it to whatever it is that you've got going on and see if it can help you and give you some relief. So as you listen to the readings, as you listen to the stories, think about, okay, is there anything in this today that I can apply to my current situation? And can I use what's being said to obtain relief? Now, I'm going to go back just a couple of paragraphs. And I'm going to start. None is to be discarded. All must be saved. And our imagination reshaping memory is the process whereby this salvation is brought to pass. To condemn the man for having lost his ways to punish the already punished. Oh, whom should I pity if I pity not the sinner who has gone astray? Not what the man was, but what he may become should be our imaginal activity. So as we know, Neville talks a lot about imagination creates reality and to uphold people into a better light than what they're currently living. If we imagine no worse of him than he of himself, he would pass as excellent. It is not the man at his best, but the imaginist exercising the spirit of forgiveness that performs the miracle. Okay, so exercising the spirit of forgiveness is connected to wonderful things happening. When we are angry, when we are hostile, when we feel, say, anxious, unloved, unwanted, if we feel stuck in hurt or brokenheartedness. Now, all of these things are going to happen to us as part of being human, and we have every right to feel what we feel. But staying stuck in these emotions after a certain amount of time, that's something that we all can practice working on and improving so that we don't stay gridlocked and fertilizing ourselves with these emotions, because those emotions bring us unwanted things. Now, it is not the man at his best, but the imaginist exercising the spirit of forgiveness that performs a miracle. So I've read that again, because as we try to hop towards forgiveness, remember, is not for the other person so much. It is to free ourselves so we don't poison our bodies, our minds, our spirit with all that resentment. Imagining has not yet had its due in the systems either of moralists or educators. When it does, there will be the opening of the prison to those who are bound. Nothing has existence for us save through the memory we have of it. Therefore, we should remember it not as it was, unless, of course, it was altogether desirable. but as we desire it to be. So lingering on past memories that are not to your liking is to reinfect yourself with the offense a second time, a third time, a fourth time. So the sooner you can, let's say, live in the end or paste over the top of a bad situation, the more desirable situation, the more desirable outcome, do it over and over and over, then you are uplifting yourself and you're uplifting your spirit by making that decision to not fertilize and marinate yourself in negative emotion. Okay? But as we desire it to be, inasmuch as imagining is creative, our memory of another either furthers or hinders him and makes his upward or downward way easier and swifter. So what we think of others is really something that can assist them or cause them some decline. Now, I can understand if someone's done something to you that you may wish that, especially in the beginning when you're feeling really wounded and hurt and still suffering from being at the hand of whatever they did. So I do think that this is food for thought. Okay, this is powerful to imagine certain things for certain people. And I would say a word of caution, not in a negative way, but make sure that you imagine things for people that you know they do want for themselves. So a family member, a loved one, that it is important to not be imagining, like, for example, maybe someone wants to go to university and they want to go to university in a particular university, and you know that that's important to them. But you would like them to be closer to you, so you imagine them going to the local university near you. That, I think, is a spiritual breach, because you are imagining something that they didn't want for themselves. So be mindful when you do imagine for others that you know the information, and that if you're not sure, then I think just radiating love and imagining them happy and content and healthy with everything else that we all desire, which is enough time, enough money, enough love, that can be a wonderful thing to imagine if you're not sure. Okay? Now, there is no coal of character so dead that it will not glow, and the flame, if but slightly turned. I love that. There is no coal of character so dead that it will not glow. Because when you just think of a lump of coal, just black and got nothing, it's lighting it. And then it slowly starts to get that beautiful red ember glow to it. So, in other words, no one has such a bad character that they can't be lit up once again, if only if the flame is slightly turned. The following story shows that imagining can make rings and husbands and move people to China. My husband, child of a broken home and raised by beloved grandparents, was never close to his mother, nor she to him. A woman of 63 and a divorcee for 32 of those years, she was lonely, embittered, and my relationship with her was strained as I attempted to stay in the middle. By her own admission, her great desire was to remarry for companionship, but she believed this to be impossible at her age. My husband would often state to me that he hoped she would remarry, and as he fervently put, perhaps live way out of town. I had the same wish, as I put it, perhaps move to China. Being wary of my personal motive for this wish, I knew I must change my feeling toward her in my imaginal drama and at the same time give her what she wanted. I began by seeing her in my imagination as a completely changed personality, a happy, joyous woman, secure and contented in a new relationship. Every time I thought of her, I would see her mentally as a new woman. About 3 weeks later, she came to our house for a visit, bringing a friend she had met many months previously. The man had recently become a widower. He was her age, secure financially, and had grown children and grandchildren. We liked him, and I was excited because it was obvious that they liked each other. But my husband still thought it was impossible. I didn't. From that day on, every time her image rose in my mind, I saw her extending her left hand towards me, and I admired the ring on her finger. 1 month later, she and her friend came to visit us, and I walked forward to greet them. As I walked forward to greet them, she proudly extended her left hand. The ring was on her finger. 2 weeks later, she was married, and we haven't seen her since. She lives in a brand new home, way out of town, and as her and her husband dislikes the long drive to our house, she may as well have moved to China. JB. There is a wide difference between the will to resist an activity and the decision to change it. He who changes an activity acts, whereas he who resists an activity reacts. One creates, the other perpetuates. Now, ask yourself the question, which one am I doing at the moment in my own life? Am I doing the changing, as in being able to imagine what I would prefer? So it is a creating change where I'm doing something to uphold and uplift something better. Or am I, with my arms crossed across my chest, being resistant and being not detached? And am I now perpetuating my current situation? So just food for thought, which one am I doing? And is it causing me any disturbance? Is it actually perpetuating something that's been happening for a long time? So if you are doing the resisting to what's going on, ask yourself, could I use my time more wisely and start to live in the end and imagine what I would prefer to make that transition, to change it into something much more to my liking? So it is the effort of the mind, the effort of spending a bit of time, and the effort of discipline and concentration. Nothing is really beyond the imaginative patterns we make of it. Memory, no less than desire, resembles a daydream. Why make it a daymare? Man can forgive only if he treats memory as a daydream and shape it to his heart's desire. So it is about, life. Life brings to our doorstep things that we do not enjoy, certain things that bother us. So like he says, why make it a daymare and be living that? Why not just see it and go, that's not to my liking. How can I make the change? By putting some time and effort into doing an imaginal scene, which would be the correction of my situation into the actual desire hatching itself, so that it is pleasing to you. RK learned that we may rob others of their abilities by our attitudes towards them. He changed his attitude and thereby changed a fact. I am not a money lender, nor am I in the investment business as such, but a friend and business acquaintance came to me for a substantial loan in order to expand his plant. Because of personal friendship, I granted the loan. with reasonable interest rates and gave my friend the right of renewal at the end of 1 year. When the first year term expired, he was behind in his interest payments and requested a 30-day extension on the note. I granted this request, but at the end of the 30 days, he was still unable to meet the note and asked for an additional extension. As I previously stated, I am not in the business of lending money. Within 20 days, I needed full payment of the loan to meet debts of my own. But I consented again to extend the note, although my own credit now was in serious jeopardy. The natural thing to do was to apply legal pressure to collect, and a few years ago, I would have done just that. Instead, I remembered your warning not to rob others of their ability. And I realized that I'd been robbing my friend of his ability to pay what he owed. 3 nights, I constructed a scene in my imagination in which I heard my friend tell me that unexpected orders had flooded his desk so rapidly he was now able to pay the loan in full. The 4th day, I received a telephone call from him. He told me that by what he called a miracle, he had received so many orders, and big ones too. He was now able to pay back my loan, including all interest due, and in fact had just mailed me a check for the entire amount. Okay. There is nothing more fundamental to the secret of imagining than the distinction between imagining and the state imagined. So, what does he mean there? When we imagine something, you can do it in 2 ways. Now, Neville talks about, he's not talking about it here, but he talks about thinking of and thinking from. So the distinction is about how you feel. So if you're thinking of something or you're imagining something, you are here and you're looking at it over there. So there's a gap, there's a space gap. When you do it like that, you don't feel a shift in the state of how you feel. There is no shift in like an upliftment, a feeling of freeing yourself from the original emotion. So it's almost like a yearning rather than the absence of a yearning. So let me give you an example. Let's use a relationship because that's pretty easy to imagine. You are here, you're imagining someone over there. That someone is someone you'd like to be with. And when you think about them, if you're thinking of it, you're thinking of it from a place of, oh, I'd like to be with them and we're not together and wouldn't it be great? But they're not here right now. And you kind of get that feeling. That's thinking of something. So there's no state change. You're not going from feeling unloved and unwanted to loved and wanted because you're thinking of it. If you're thinking from it, you would be thinking, I love thinking about, wouldn't it be nice if we went for dinner? Wouldn't it be nice if we went to a movie together? Wouldn't it be nice if we went to that amazing concert? I love thinking about that. That would be so much fun. You get the lift, you get that shift in your state. So what he talks about, imagining can be done in 2 ways. Thinking of, no state change. Thinking from, an upliftment of state change. The second one is the one you want to master. Because the first one is, even though you're thinking about it, it's over there, but you haven't got it in your life here and now. So this is one of Neville's biggest lessons, is the imagining from rather than of. Okay? You can think of all sorts of things, but if you are not in the feeling place, that's not going to bring it in towards you. You have to become the state before the state shows you the evidence. Okay, so you have to change before it changes. That's basically what the whole thing is. And if you learn to change your state before you get things, then you are becoming someone that knows where your true power is, how to really work with the power within you. Okay, so I'm going to read this last little bit again, because I think this is one of the most important things that he said in this chapter of attitudes. There is nothing more fundamental to the secret of imagining. So this is like the foundation of what imagination is really about. The distinction between imagining and the state imagined. So the state is what you're going for, and you're using the pictures, whatever you're seeing in your mind. If you're doing it visually, it might be audio where you hear a conversation, you hear someone's voice, but the end result is, what does it do to you as you think from this particular state, which is, I have now got what I want. Oh, if you get that sighing relief thing going on, that's how you know that you've captured the state. You're moving towards it because you're letting go of the tension, the anguish, the brokenheartedness, the anxiety, the fear, the resentment, whatever negative emotion you have. Sighing is a great way to know what direction you're going in. Okay, so we're going to hop into chapter 13. All trivia. Just give me a second. I'm just going to take a sip of water. All trivia, chapter 13. General knowledge is remote knowledge. It is in particulars that wisdom consists and happiness too. Blake. Now, we must use our imagination to achieve particular ends, even if the ends are all trivia, because men do not clearly define and imagine particular ends. The results are uncertain, while they might be perfectly certain. So when you just react to life, in other words, you're reacting to what's happening to you. You're bouncing around like a ping pong ball, and the external world has control over how you feel. And that's how it feels when we are just living day by day unconsciously, as in you're just moving from thing to thing. But once you understand that it is your emotions that bring towards you events, circumstances, and you have the ability, if you adjust your mood, Neville talks about it as moods, we talk about it as emotions, feelings, if we adjust those, then we are able to change external circumstances. Okay, so it's imagining really is a solution-based system, the way Neville talks about it. He's about correcting anything that is undesirable, not to your liking, any disease, any financial, relationship, property. There's been all sorts of stories, and we've read quite a few of them in this book, but it really doesn't matter. It's as long as you understand that you can influence through putting in some mental effort in, you see. Now, how do we distinguish the oak from the beech, the horse from the ox, but by the bounding outline? Definition asserts the reality of the particular thing against the formless generalizations which flood the mind. So, in other words, get clear about what you want and get some definition, get a proper, clear outline of what you desire. So you know, rather than letting just random thoughts jump around your head and then you have emotions about things, like this is one that I see really affects people. They get online, they get into groups, they debate stuff with people they don't know, they get emotionally wound up. And then often drama gets created in your own personal life because you're in this debating, pushing against, arguing, creating a whole bunch of stuff within you. And then that is what fertilizes your tomorrow. It fertilizes your week, your month, your emotional state is what you are now sending forward. It's like you're sending this cord forward. You're connected to what you send out, and then it drags you in there, whatever it is that you sent out. So if you're sending out anger, resentment, and aggravation, frustration, you are going to experience a lot more of that in your personal life again and again and again. The energy, it drags it in. So if you want to argue online and debate online and do all that, ask yourself, is this actually worth the cost? Is it worth the cost? So everything you touch with your mind, everything you touch with your thought, everything you touch with your beliefs, everything you put your energy into comes back and it deposits something into your life. So ask yourself, what am I doing? And is it worth what it's been giving me? So if you're depositing and enjoying and doing lots of wonderful, happy things that bring you joy, you're probably getting a lot of good, happy deposits, joyful deposits, and all of that, you see. But if you're not, ask yourself, how much of this am I creating through what I'm doing? And I would add, people that watch a lot of crime, people that watch a lot of those married at first sight things, all of that is drama. Every night before you go to bed, you put that stuff in your head, and then you go to bed. And then what happens the next day, the day after that, at work, with your family, in your country, in your community? What's going on? Because we have collective consciousness in our little areas, and your little area could be your group of friends, your little area can be your family, your little area can be your neighbors, your little area can be where you go to work. What's going on in all these areas in your life, you see? Okay, so once you know this stuff, you're really mindful as to where you put your attention, and you're really mindful not to go complaining about stuff, because that creates another wave coming your way. Not saying that you can never say anything to anyone. It's not that extreme. But it's like the more emotion you have, you're better off diffusing your own bomb, so to speak, your emotional bomb, whether it be, you know, might be that you go to a psychologist, it might be you go to a therapist, it might be that you speak to your mother, it might be that you speak to your best friend, but that you don't spend hours and hours offloading all this heavy duty emotion about what your colleague did at work, because there's another round that comes around when you put way too much energy on those things, you see. So it's just food for thought. If you're happy with how things are, then you're doing a good job. If you're struggling with certain things, then be mindful. Hang on a minute. Let me see what I've been giving my attention to, and let me see if I can correct it. Okay? Now, life on Earth is a kindergarten for image making. The bigness or littleness of the object to be created is not in itself important. The great and golden rule of art, as well as of life, said Blake, is that the more distinct, sharp, and wiry the boundary line, the more perfect the work of art. So, in other words, the more clarity you have, the better the delivery that you receive. And the less keen and sharp, the greater is the evidence of weak imitation. So you get kind of parts of what you want, but, oh, I didn't get clear about that. So now I just got a mixed bag of nuts, so to speak. I got some things I liked and I got some things, oh, I wasn't clear about that. I need to sharpen that up. Okay. Now, what is it that builds a house and plants a garden but the definite and determinate? Leave out this line and you leave out life itself. The following stories are concerned with the acquiring of seemingly little things, or toys, as I call them, but they are important because of the clear imaginal images that created the toys. The author of the first story is one of whom it is said she has everything. This is true. She has financial, social, and intellectual security. She writes, "As you know, through your teaching and through my practice of that teaching, I have completely changed myself and my life. 2 weeks ago, when you spoke of toys, I realized I had never used my imagination to acquire things and decided it would be fun to try it. You told of a young woman who was given a hat by merely wearing that hat in her imagination. The last thing on earth I needed was a hat, but I wanted to test my imagination for this getting of things. So I selected a hat pictured in a fashion magazine. I cut the picture out and I stuck it on the mirror of my dressing table. I studied the picture carefully, then I shut my eyes and in my imagination I put that hat on my head and wore it as I walked out of the house. I did this just once. The following week, I met some friends for lunch, and one of them was wearing the hat. We all admired it. The very next day, I received a parcel by special delivery messenger. The hat was in the parcel. The friend who had worn it the day before had sent the hat to me with a note saying she didn't particularly care for the hat and didn't know why she had bought it in the first place, but for some reason she thought it would look well on me and would I please accept it. GL. Movement from dreams to things is the power driving humanity. I'm going to read that again because that's a powerful line. Movement from dreams to things is the power driving humanity. So, whatever dream you have currently, ask yourself, can I put more effort into the imagining so that it may come to pass? How much time have I put into imagining? How much time have I put into the solution? How much time have I put into complaining about it, that I don't have it? How much time have I put into living in the end, whether it's a script, whether it's sharing with a friend, because you can share with a friend you're living in the end. You don't have to say, oh, I'm practicing Neville Goddard's living in the end. You can just say, you know what? I keep thinking about, wouldn't it be amazing to have da-da-da-da-da? Now, obviously, you've got to be mindful who you say it to, you know your friends, and be mindful because some people are extremely positive and fun and adventurous and can open their minds to that, and others cannot. So just be mindful of who you share things with. We must live wholly on the level of imagination, and it must be consciously and deliberately undertaken. All my life, I have loved birds. I enjoy watching them, hearing their chatter, feeding them. and I'm particularly fond of the small sparrow. For many months, I have fed them crumbs of morning bread, wild bird seed, and anything I believed they would eat. And for all those months, I have been frustrated as I watched the larger birds, particularly the pigeons, excuse me, command the area, gobbling up most of the good seed and leaving the husks for my sparrows. To use my imagination on this problem seemed fastidious to me at first, but the more I thought of it, the more interesting the idea became. So one night, I set about seeing the little birds come in for their full share of daily offerings. And I would tell my wife that the pigeons no longer interfered with my sparrows, but took their share like gentlemen and then left the area. I continued this imaginary action for almost 1 month. Then one morning, I noticed that the pigeons had disappeared. The sparrows had breakfast all to themselves for a few days. For those few days, no larger bird entered the area. They did return eventually, but to this day, they have never again infringed on the area occupied by my sparrows. They stay together, eating what I put out for them, leaving a full share of the area to my tiny friends. And do you know, I actually believe the sparrows understand. They no longer seem to be afraid when I walk among them. RK. This lady proves that unless our hearts is in the task, unless we imagine ourselves right into the feeling of our wish fulfilled, we are not there. For we are all imagination and must beware and what we are in imagination. Lazlo, you have a question.
I found that very interesting, to be honest. For example, let's say I think you mentioned that thing of arguing in social media, right? Something
Yeah.
something that I recently have been thinking about is what would happen if, for example, you constantly visualize yourself like being sitting right next the deathbed of a person that basically made fun of you, who made you feel miserable and everything. What would happen if you imagine yourself like being there in his deathbed, like having the last laugh and even smoking something in terms of celebration?
Lazlo, let me stop you there. You and I have discussed this more than once, many, many, many times, about using your imagination in a negative way. What have I said to you about that?
That it will just fire back at me.
Correct.
I
So is
see.
that really what you want? Do
Oh,
unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, I understand some people do things to us that are unforgivable and feel unforgivable, especially when we were children. But use your knowledge to have good boundaries and to be able to be smart, to not put yourself in these situations as an adult. Because some people I do think have got an evil streak. I do. Maybe it's the balance of good and evil. I don't know. We can only speculate because we're not God. As in, we're not God as in all-knowing God. We are God as in we can create things, but we're not the all-seeing, all-knowing God. So when you go down this road, your revenge will consume you. Your revenge will eat away at you. Whatever happens to them, it's like you are sending out an arrow and 5 will come back and get you. Do not send out things you would not want to come back to you. I'm not saying don't be angry, don't be hurt or any of that, but process your emotions.
I see. So, for example, if someone said, let's say, 500 times the affirmation, vengeance is mine, it will just fire back at them or it will benefit them?
Lazlo, do you think that's a good affirmation?
Well, I think it has an affirmation of superiority, like a ultimate victory thing.
But this is the thing, you and I have talked about this hundreds of times. It's not about getting into a position of superiority or less than. It's about just getting to the point where you are no longer needing to try and rise up. People that want to be superior feel less than, usually. And then they're trying to build themselves up to have control over others so that other people can't do certain things to them. It's not a powerful position.
So
It's a position of victim trying to be victorious.
yes,
It doesn't work because the energy underneath is still victim, anger, and resentment. Now, I'm not saying that some people should go to jail, that some people should not go to jail for some of the things they've done. But, you know, we cannot, all we can do is sweep our side of the street and we clear our own mental, emotional states. And then we hand that stuff over. I mean, sometimes I've had to coach people that have to go through court and all sorts of stuff because they have been victimized and some stuff's been really, really horrible. But the whole idea is to build yourself up where you look at, where are my victim thoughts? Where am I feeling less than? The one, you know, when you've been bullied and all these things. So we have to work on, I'm not saying ever continue to stay around these people if this is the stuff that people have done. You don't need to jump from the frying pan into the fire. But as soon as you can get away from people, you remove yourself and then you work on your stuff. Otherwise, you attract another perpetrator. So the whole thing about self-love is to correct your resentment, your anger, your feeling put upon by others, and remove yourself physically, but then you still got to deal with the mental and the emotional, you see. And you can, but it takes work. I'm not going to say to you it doesn't take work, Lazlo. It does. It takes work. This is big spiritual maturity jumps. It's huge. But you know, if there's a video, Lazlo, I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you. It's called The Twin Experiments. It's quite a disturbing video, the woman that shares her story. But her amazing ability to forgive what happened was so profound that if that woman can forgive, then the rest of us should be able to as well. She went through something really horrible, but her spiritual maturity, her spiritual understanding created her to be the power that woman has. I think the power to forgive is one of the greatest powers of all, because it takes humility. It takes letting go of wanting to smash people that have been horrible. And I mean, smash them, like what you're saying, sitting next to them when they're dying and feeling good that they're dead, you know, because that's really what that's about. But you go, okay, it really is acknowledging that we feel rage, acknowledging that we feel we've been bullied or abused or all those things. I'm never going to say to you, do not acknowledge that. This stuff has happened. And you and I have talked at length about some of the stuff that's happened to you. So it's about, okay, I may not want to do revision and revise the past because this stuff, I don't want to go back and think about it. But what I can do is not drag the resentment and that lack of forgiveness around because it's poisoning me. So if you can look at that video, Lazlo, I don't know did I mention it to you before?
I think it was about something like the woman who forgave the Nazis or something like that. I think it was.
Yeah, I won't go into it, but if somebody wants to put the link up in the chat, if someone can look it up, it's an older woman and it's called The Twin Experiments. I think it's even the Holocaust, maybe the Holocaust Twin Experiments. If someone who's quite good on the little computer can put the link down below, the woman's got kind of like, because she's older, she's got like little bags under her eyes on the thumbnail.
I see.
Yeah, if you can have a look at that, Lazlo, honestly, it will, I think it's one of those things to watch, even though it's disturbing. It's watching it once a year to remind yourself to not go down this road.
I see. And can I say something? Like, I understand perfectly that me being resentful, angry, and hurt for what these people did is actually giving them what they want. It's actually giving them the upper hand, because that's what they want. They want you to be their victim. They want you to feel like they beat you, and things like that. And by being resentful and angry about it, you are basically letting them live rent-free in your head.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So
Now,
basically, the best way to deal with it is like, the same as those people are gone now. They don't even remember me or know what they did to me. I should do the same. I should move out, forget about them, and not even remember what they did. I should do the same.
well, it's almost not, I don't know if you can not remember what people have done, but I do think it's about saying, okay, certain things happened and they've really affected me, but I am not 10 anymore or 15 anymore, or whatever age you were when certain things happen. And you go, now I'm an adult. I have the ability to make decisions and to understand and to learn, because the more self-love you have, I think that is the best armor for anything. It protects, self-love protects. I'm not saying you become just a doormat and you let everybody walk all over you when you have self-love. Self-love means I'm not going to be around you. Self-love means I'm not living with you. Self-love means, oh, is that what you're going to do to me once? Well, you won't have the opportunity to do that again. That's self-love. It's not being a doormat. It's being understanding that my energy as a victim, unfortunately, brings me perpetrators. And, you know, it's tough because we can't, I mean, you think, okay, well, why does that happen to children? Whatever God has sorted out, whatever dynamics you end up on this planet with, that's one of those questions that, I'm not going to speak on God's behalf and say why these things happen. I don't know. I don't like it, just like all of you. It bothers me when children get affected, when disabled people get affected, when people that are weaker get abused. I don't understand why we have to go through these things. Some people, it depends what spiritual practice you follow. There's lots of different answers. But to me, it's all speculation. Until we get to talk to God, source in person, that's when you're going to know. Because, so it's like we can't really know why people have to suffer in these ways. But I can tell you, when I look back, because I can only go off my own suffering, when I go back and look at my own suffering, I can see that there are things in me that have become, I'm stronger, I'm more, I can spot people that are taking the piss, let's say, more quickly, as in someone's trying to take advantage of me, someone that's trying to rip me off, someone that's pretending to give something, but they really want something. I can see that a lot more now than I could before, because I didn't understand that there was people that used to do those things, because I was naive, especially when you're younger. So as you get older, yes, you work on your self-love, but then it's like, okay, now I'm stronger because of that. Now, I do think there are some people that some things they never recover from. never recover from. And like the sort of story that I shared the other day, or probably about a week ago on my channel, of my relative who basically, I mean, we talk about it in the family, but it's like, I know she died of a broken heart because she didn't have self-love and she didn't have self-worth. She died because, you know, the man that she loved and had on a pedestal and she thought he was more important than her, because she was getting love from him and she didn't have self-love. In the end, when he took the love away, she collapsed and died like a flower that hadn't been watered. So there are certain things that really, really crush people. And I understand that some people cannot rebound. But
Yes.
I do think if you work on your self-love, your self-worth, a connection to source, to God, to infinite intelligence, really, whatever word you prefer, use that. But those people, I think the ones that don't survive, I would say, are the ones that they can't come up to rise up and develop the self-love. Maybe they're in a country that doesn't have Wi-Fi, you know, maybe they're in a family or a culture where you know, the type of person you are, like, for example, people that are gay, people that are women, people that are under the age of 15, people that are in, you know, certain minority groups. All these, in certain countries, people are victimized. So, but I think if you have access to the internet, you can look around, you can research, you can learn things to pull yourself out of your situation. But if you know about imagination, coming back to what we're reading today, I think that, you know, you can imagine yourself not in the situation you're in, and then you get winched out, you know, you can get pulled out. So there's always hope, but there's always learning that comes. I think learning comes the best through suffering, unfortunately.
I see.
Yeah.
Sorry if it looks like I'm a little like hard head. That it seems that even if someone explains me something tens of times, it seems that it seems that I'm unable to understand. Sorry for that. And actually, I have to point out that I really admire your ability to notice when some people or someone has like an inferiority complex or a victim complex, even though those persons don't seem to share it or want you to know it. It's like,
yes. Yeah. I mean, I think those that have got the I mean, I think, Lazlo, we see it a lot now with the entitlement. People, I don't know, it got worse with the pandemic, but I think it was there before. And social media and the pandemic have put a magnifying glass on this, on something that was already there. But this entitlement and this, I deserve, with hands on hips, I'm not talking about that humble, I deserve to be loved, I deserve to have a good job, I deserve that quiet, humble, I deserve, no problem. That other I deserve, with the hands on the hips, the entitlement and the world owes me, that stuff is often covering up a massive I'm not good enough, a massive I feel less than. And so they try and elevate to be better than others because they don't want to feel that. So, but you know, it's everybody's got their own journey. Everybody's got their own journey, and it depends on so many different factors, but we can definitely improve our lives and definitely improve our connection with that better life that we desire once you understand the rules of engagement. The rules of engagement are, we need to know about our energy. If we don't understand that the energy, meaning our emotions that we project out, law of projection, the energy of us is what brings to us what we live. Live stream, day by day by day by day. So if you don't like what you're living, look at what you're projecting. And if you understand the rules of engagement, you understand this, then you've got the ability to make a change. And that's exciting, because it doesn't matter where you are and what's going on. Once you understand this, you can put some effort into exploding different energy, exploding passion, exploding joy, exploding and making an effort to get to that incredible feeling. Now, that's not easy when you're feeling shackled and trapped by something. But that 5 minutes a day effort, that 10 minutes a day effort, you will start to move the needle. You'll start to move the needle. Okay?
I see. And I wonder if I could talk to you about a way that I found to be like happy and things like that. My point of view regarding needing a person, needing someone and things like that. Can you tell you my point of view? Can I?
Darling, I'm going to have to keep reading a bit because this is
All right.
we got to keep reading the book because this is what
Fine.
this study class is for.
Fine, no problem. And can I raise my hand again, like when you finish reading, so I can talk with you again? Can I give
Darling,
my hand,
at the moment, I've got a relative who's going through cancer and recovering, so I'm not giving my energy out apart from doing these. So at the moment, I ask you to pause.
Oh, so I think so. The talk we can until we can. Sorry. So this like you don't want me to put my hand, raise my hand again, and you just want to finish reading and that's it. Like not more.
I don't mind if people ask a question or two during the session, Lazlo. No, during the session it's okay. I'm just talking about outside at the moment. You know, as in, yeah.
So I can keep my hand raised, and so when you finish reading, I can ask you again when you are available. Can I?
You can, Lazlo, but remember there's other people in the group too, okay?
Yes, of course, no problem.
Yeah, okay. Now, so yes, for those of you that haven't been here before, if some of you haven't, you can put your hand up and ask questions along the way, especially if there's something you want to ask about what's being read and how to apply it to whatever situation you've got going on. So, in early February, my husband and I had been in our new house for a month. A home lovely beyond telling, perched on a rugged cliff with the ocean of our front yard, wind and sky for neighbors and seagulls, for the guests, the promise. We were ecstatic. If you have experienced the joy and woe of building your own home, you know how completely filled with happiness you are and how completely empty your purse is. 100 lovely things clamored to be bought for that house. But the one thing we wanted most of all was the most useless, a picture. Not just any picture, but a wild, wonderful scene of the sea, dominated by a great white clipper ship. This picture had been in our thoughts all the months of building, and we left one living room wall free of paneling to hold it. My husband mounted decorative red and green ship lanterns on the wall to frame our picture, but the picture itself would have to wait. Draperies, carpeting, all the practical items must come first. Perhaps so, but that didn't stop either one of us from seeing that picture in our imagination on that wall. One day while shopping, I strolled into a small art gallery, and as I walked through the door, I stopped. So suddenly, a gentleman walking behind me crashed into an easel. I apologized and pointed to a painting hanging at the head height across the room. That's what did it. I've never seen anything so wonderful. He introduced himself as the owner of the gallery and said, yes, an original by the greatest English painter of clipper ships the world has known. He went on to tell me about the artist, but I wasn't listening. I couldn't take my eyes from that wonderful ship, and I was experiencing a very strange thing. It was only a moment in time, but the art gallery faded and I saw that picture on my wall. I'm afraid the owner thought me a little giddy, and I was, but I finally managed to return my attention to his voice when he mentioned an astronomical price. I smiled and said, perhaps someday. He continued to tell me about the painter and also about an American artist who was the only living lithographer capable of copying the great English master. He said, "If you're very lucky, you may pick up one of his prints. I've seen his work. It's perfect, down to the last detail. Many people prefer prints to paintings. Prints or paintings, I knew nothing about the value of either. And anyway, all I wanted was that scene. When my husband returned home that evening, I talked of nothing but that painting and pleaded with him to visit the gallery and see it. Maybe we could find a print of it somewhere," the man said. "Yes," he interrupted, "but you know, we can't afford any picture now." Our conversation ended there, but that night after dinner, I stood in our living room and saw that picture on our wall. The next day, my husband had an appointment with a client, which he did not want to keep, but the appointment was kept and my husband didn't return home until after dark. When he walked through the front door, I was busy in another part of the house and called a greeting to him. A few minutes later, I heard hammering, and I walked into the living room to see what he was doing. On our wall was hanging my picture. In my first moment of intense joy, I remembered the man in the art gallery saying, "If you're lucky, you may pick up one of his prints." Lucky? Well, here is my husband's part of this story. Making the call already mentioned, he entered one of the poorest, meanest little houses he had ever been in. The client introduced himself and led my husband into a tiny, dark dining area where the two of them sat down at a bare table. As my husband put his briefcase on the tabletop, he looked up and saw the picture on the wall. He confessed to me he had conducted a very sloppy interview because he couldn't take his eyes from that picture. The client signed the contract and gave him a check as a down payment, which, as my husband believed at the time, was $10 short. Mentioning this fact to the client, he said the check given was every cent he could afford, but added, "I've noticed your interest in this picture. It was here when I took this place. I don't know to whom it belonged, but I don't want it. If you'll put the $10 in for me, I will give you the picture." When my husband returned to his company's main office, he learned he had been in error about the amount. He wasn't charged the $10. Our picture is on our wall, and it cost us nothing. Of R.L., who writes the following letter, it must be said, "In faith, lady, you have a merry heart. One day during a bus strike, I needed to go into the downtown area and had to walk 10 blocks from my home to the nearest bus in operation. Before starting home, I recall there was no food market on this new route and I wouldn't be able to stop to shop for dinner. I had enough to manage a potluck meal, but I would need bread. After shopping all day, the 10 blocks back from the bus line was all I could manage, and to go still further to shop for bread was out of the question. I stood very still for a moment, and I allowed a vision of bread to dance in my head. Then I started for home. When I boarded the bus, I was so tired, I grabbed the first available seat and almost sat on a paper bag. Now, on a crowded bus, tired passengers rarely look directly at one another. So being naturally curious, I peeked into the bag. Of course, it was a loaf of bread. Not just any bread, but the very same bread, the same brand of bread I always buy. Trifles are all trifles, but they produce their trivia without price. Imagining accomplished these things without the means generally reputed necessary to do so. Man rates wealth in a way that bears no relation to real values. So again, these two stories show us it doesn't matter about money. It matters about focus. It matters about imagination, and it matters about the intensely wonderful feeling that you can water your imaginal scene with. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Isaiah 55.1. Now, we are heading into chapter 14. We might even finish this book before the end of the 12. Yes, we will. The creative moment. I love this. This is really interesting. The natural man does not receive the gifts of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 2:14. There is a moment in each day that Satan cannot find, nor can his watch fiends find it. But the industrious find this moment, and it multiply. And when it once is found, it renovates every moment of the day if rightly placed. So the creative moment. The creative moment, when you put your focus on what you desire, when you put your focus on something you really want, and you saturate yourself in that incredible feeling of having it for that 5-10 minutes. That's where Blake says it renovates every moment. Because not only does it make you feel good in the moment that you do it, it also makes you feel good in the moment that you receive it. So you get a double gift. Whenever we imagine things as they ought to be, rather than as they seem to be, is the moment. So, like what we were just talking about, thinking of something and thinking from it, the creative moment is really how he has explained it here, to see things, to imagine things as they ought to be, as in how you would prefer that it is to your liking. So that's the creative moment. That's when you exercise your creativity in your focus. Satan, Blake writes, is a reactor. He never acts, he only reacts. And if our attitude to the happenings of the day is reactionary, are we not playing Satan's part? So ask yourself, with what you've got going on now, are you reacting with emotion? Are you reacting by not being able to sleep and going over things in your mind at 3 o'clock in the morning? Are you reacting by picking up an addiction, smoking, drugs, cigarettes, gambling, overeating, because you feel emotionally disturbed and you have not yet at this point exercised your ability to be able to focus on living from the wish fulfilled? So all of these things, when you're in these states of picking up an addiction, it might just be you're binging because you're emotionally not feeling well, you're mentally not able to let go of something, because letting go and surrendering thoughts is not always the easiest thing. And that's why Ho'oponopono is good. It replaces your repetitive, habitual, negative thought clusters that we get. You have one thought about something and then it mushrooms. It's like the ball bouncing down the stairs. It keeps going. So that's being what Blake calls in the Satan state, the reactor state. So ask yourself, am I reacting to things or am I creating things? Am I spending more time perhaps in meditation, or being on the bus and looking out the window daydreaming, or imagining that I have got the very thing that I desire? So whatever you've got going on, ask yourself, which state am I in? The creative state, as in the creative moment, or the reactor state, which is what Neville calls, or Blake in Neville's book calls, the reactor or the Satan moment. Now, man is only reacting in his natural or Satan state. He never acts or creates, he only reacts or recreates. One real creative moment, one real feeling of the wish fulfilled is worth more than the whole natural life of reaction. Okay? In such a moment, God's work is done. So one real creative moment. So you spending 10 minutes, 5 minutes, really feeling the wish fulfilled of this desire that you have is worth more than a whole natural life of reaction. So ask yourself, how much of my life have I spent reacting to things that have been happening? And how much time have I spent using the creative moment, which is I'm going to disconnect and detach from that thing I don't like, and I'm going to pull in, shut down my senses, and then I'm going to go into my imagination, and I'm going to imagine living from the solution of what I really desire. Nice. That's how you get your power back. That's how you ignite your power. That's how you pull away from your emotional disturbance. That's how you pull away from your anger at that person, that company, that boss, that lover, that family member. You choose to pull away. You stop watering that plant. You stop throwing petrol on the fire. You let the fire die out. And so in such a moment, God's work is done. Once more, we may say with Blake, God only acts and is in existing beings or men. So the way to connect with God, source, infinite intelligence, is to see something that's not to your liking and to go, okay, I can feel this feels horrible looking at that. And I am going to ignite in me the use of my imagination to now be able to transform this, because I know how. I just got to spend a little of my time. Time is your most valuable commodity. It is not money. Like the people with the picture, we know. And the woman with the loaf of bread, you know, like even if she had money, she didn't want to spend more time after a long day at work and having to walk another 10 blocks to go and buy a bit of bread. What she did was she used her imagination. I mean, obviously not knowing there was going to be a loaf of bread on the bus, but she just did it and let go. And woof, that request was heard. I mean, what a perfect hand and glove fit. Sits in the seat on top of a bag of bread. It's the exact bread that she normally buys. And this guy goes to do this deal with his client in this weird little house in this little dark room. And the guy doesn't have enough money, but he happens to have the exact picture. I mean, how many paintings and pictures in the world are there? I mean, God or source or infinite intelligence ability to hear the detail of what we desire is mind-bending. When you start to practice this and some of these like absolutely perfect things appear, you go, hang on, I am being heard. There's no way. And the loaf of bread, I mean, how many different loaves of bread and styles of bread are there? But she gets the one loaf that is the loaf that she wants. I mean, that gives you goosebumps. The detail from the universe is astounding. So ask yourself, how can I attract my loaf of bread? How can I attract my boat painting? How can I put the focus on my specifics with clarity and love, and then surrender and letting go and getting on with what I need to do? It's amazing. I mean, it'll bring tears to your eyes, the absolute detail in which source delivers. Profound. But you have to ask, and rightly ask, as in with love and faith, which is, I know I can get to where I want to go. I know I can bring this in. And that takes practice, and you get more practice every day to be able to do it. So, you know, if you didn't get it right once, don't worry. There'll be another 100 times you can practice on other things in your life, for you or for your kids, your parents, your partner, or whatever. You know, there's always someone that you can practice for if you haven't got anything to practice for yourself. So, continuing. I'm going to read that last bit again because I think this is good to know. I think this is one of the things that you just go, oh, it's so good to hear that. One real creative moment, one real feeling of the wish fulfilled is worth more than the whole natural life of reaction, where you're not creating, you're just responding, reacting to what's going on. In such a moment, God's work is done. Once more, we may say with Blake, God only acts and is in existing beings or men. So it's like nothing can be delivered if we don't ask, if we don't use the creative moment, if we don't launch the desire with energy, with absolute feeling of excitement, freedom, or joy when you think about having your desire, whatever it is, whether it's as small as a loaf of bread or as large as, you know, owning your own company or something, whatever it is. There is an imaginal past and an imaginal future. If by reacting, the past is recreated into the present, so by acting out of our dreams of fancy, can the future be brought into the present? I'm going to read that again, because there's quite a lot packed into this 3 lines. So you're here in the present, there's an imaginal past and an imaginal future. So the imaginal past, there's a real past, there's an imaginal past, how you would have preferred it. Okay. Now, the imaginal future too, you're imagining in the present what you would prefer in the future. So that's why Neville talks about revision. You're cleaning up the emotions that keep you dragging back with a fish hook, but then you're dragging it into the present because of the fish hook from the past, dragging it into the present. So the revision is to clean that up, you see, so that you don't drag the present into the future and get the same thing over and over. And this is for those of you that say to me often about patterns. I had that in my last job. I had that in my last relationship. You know, my sister's still doing this after 30 years. Whatever it is, if you don't sweep your side of the street, you get reoccurring patterns. And that tells you just haven't done enough of something, you know, might be enough. You can revise, you can do Ho'oponopono, you can do inner child work, you can read Neville and purely work at the imagination level. It is totally up to you what appeals to you and how to use it. Okay. So he's saying here, there is an imaginal past. So you've got the real past, you've got the imaginal past. The imaginal past is what you probably would prefer that didn't happen. So that's when you would paste over the top of a bad thing, a positive thing. That depends on the level of trauma. Some people can't do it because the trauma runs too deep. If you can't, don't worry. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you and you can't do it. Some stuff has got too much trauma and stress and heartache attached to it that you can't just do revision, okay? Some things take, I think, going to someone that's really well-versed in trauma, PTSD, those sorts of things, work with someone that knows how to do just that, because that's a really specialist thing. Now, so by acting out of our dreams of fancy, can the future be brought into the present? So, you know, let's say a woman who wants to get married might buy a wedding dress at a secondhand store or borrow her sister's wedding dress, put it on and take some photographs. And what she's doing is she's bringing the future into the present, and then she can look at the photos. So that gives her imaginal visual scenes to be able to continue what she would like for later. And that would give her a sense of joy in that particular instance. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. Nothing stands between man and the fulfillment of his dream but facts, and facts are the creations of imagining. If man changes his imagining, he will change the facts. Okay, let's read that again. Again, Neville can be wordy, and you can read something and go, yeah, I think I get that, but let's read that again. Nothing stands between man and the fulfillment of his dream but facts. So nothing stands between you and the fulfillment of your dream but facts. Okay, so let's look at the facts. The facts are the creations of imagining. Okay, so what does he mean? Well, facts, what's happened is the creation of what you imagined last week, last month, last year, a decade ago. You are living now what you planted. And he talks about that in Seed Time in the Harvest. A lot of people forget the seeds they planted, and then they wonder why they've got this harvest. So you might have planted a lot of seeds before you started doing Neville's work or self-love or any of that. So you might have planted a lot of seeds before. Now you know better, you can do better. And you can go, okay, well, I'm not planting those seeds anymore. So if man changes his imagining, he will change the facts. So whatever was facts in the past, you can change that today if you rearrange the mind. Now, for those of you that haven't watched that lecture, there's on YouTube, there's a lecture called Rearrange the Mind. It's about 44 minutes long. It's by Neville in his own voice. I think that lecture and the lecture Mental Diets by Neville in his own voice are two of the best lectures on YouTube. If you love Neville or you want to learn, they're really good. Listen to them over and over. You will hear stuff. I've listened to both of those lectures hundreds of times. I still hear something that I don't remember, even after listening to them that many times. Because as your life unfolds, it's like you can access different levels of understanding. Okay. So the second one, Sarit, is Mental Diets. Mental Diets. Both of the thumbnails look the same. They've got just Neville's head. Okay. So Mental Diets. If you can put into YouTube, Rearrange the Mind, Neville's voice, and then put Mental Diets, Neville's voice. That way it eliminates anybody else that's doing it. Okay. Now, nothing stands between man and the fulfillment of his dreams but facts. And facts are the creations of imagining. So anything that's a fact for you today was something that you planted and imagined before. If man changes his imagining, he will change the facts. So what you imagine today will change the facts of what happens later, next week, next month, next 6 months, etc. Okay, so this is good to know because it means you're powerful and that you're not stuck having to live what you're living if it's really bothering you. Okay, you're not stuck. That is like the greatest information of all. You can focus your way out of stuff and you can focus your way into good stuff if that's, you've got a list of desires. Now, this story tells of a young woman who found the moment and by acting out her dream of fancy, brought the future into the instant, not realizing what she had done until the final scene. Now, the incident related below must appear to be a coincidence to those never exposed to your teaching. But I know I observed an imaginative act taking solid form in perhaps 4 minutes. I believe you will be interested in reading this account, written down exactly as it happened a few minutes after the actual occurrence yesterday morning. I was driving my car east on Sunset Boulevard in the center lane of traffic braking slowly to stop for a red signal at a three-way intersection. When my attention was caught by the sight of an elderly lady, dressed all in grey, running across the street in front of my car. Her arm was raised, signaling to the driver of a bus, which was beginning to pull away from the curb. She was obviously attempting to cross in front of the bus to delay it. The driver slowed his vehicle and I thought would allow her to enter. Instead, as she jumped on the curb, the bus pulled away, leaving her standing just in the act of lowering her arm. She turned and walked swiftly towards a nearby phone booth. As my signal changed to green, I put my car in motion. I wished I had been behind the bus and had been able to offer her a ride. Her extreme agitation was obvious, even from the distance I was away from her. My wish instantly fulfilled itself in a mental drama, and as I drove away, the fancy played itself out in the following scene. I opened the car door, and a lady dressed in grey stepped in, smiling, relieved, and thanking me profusely. She was out of breath from running and said, "I only have a few blocks to go. I'm meeting friends and I was so afraid they would leave without me when I missed my bus." I left my imaginary lady out a few blocks further on, and she was delighted to observe her friends still waiting for her. She thanked me again and walked away. The entire mental scene was spanned in the time it takes to drive one block at a normal rate of speed. The fancy satisfied my feelings regarding the real incident, and I immediately forgot it. 4 blocks farther, I was still in the center lane, and again had to stop for a red signal. My attention at this time was turned inward on something I had now forgotten when suddenly someone tapped on the closed window of my car, and I looked up to see a lovely appearing elderly lady with grey hair. She was dressed all in grey. Smiling, she asked if she might ride a few blocks with me as she had missed her bus. She was out of breath as though from running, and I was so stunned by her sudden appearance in the middle of a busy street at my window that for a moment I could only react physically, and without answering, leaned over and opened my car door. She got in and said, "It's so annoying to rush and then miss a bus. I wouldn't have imposed on you like this, but I'm supposed to meet some friends a few blocks down the street, and if I had to walk now, I would miss them." 6 blocks further on, she exclaimed, "Oh, good. They're still waiting for me." I let her out and she thanked me again and walked away. I'm afraid I drove to my own destination by automatic reflex, for I had fully recognized that I had just observed a waking dream take form in physical action. I recognized what was happening while it was happening. As soon as I could, I wrote down each part of the incident and found a startling consistency between the waking dream and the subsequent reality. Both women were elderly, gracious in manner, dressed all in grey, and out of breath from hurrying to catch a bus and missing it. Both wished to meet friends for whom, for some reason, could not wait for them any longer. Both left my car within the space of a few blocks after successfully completing their contact with their friends. I am amazed, confounded, and elated. If there is no such thing as coincidence or accident, then I witnessed imagination become reality almost instantaneously. J.R.B. There is a moment in each day that Satan cannot find, nor can his watch fiends find it. But the industrious find this moment and multiply it. And when it once is found, It renovates every moment of the day if rightly placed. That is so beautiful. So the moment is the moment you put your attention and your focus on that which you would prefer. And that moment then multiplies itself. And then when it once is found, which is the time you allocate to do it, she did it while she was driving. Found the moment when it's found, it renovates every moment of the day if rightly placed. So what happens is it goes forward and it starts to put things in motion because you have altered what you would normally do. So this woman entertained this because it bothered her that she witnessed the woman missing her bus, knowing if she had just been behind the bus, she could have offered. So she had this dissatisfaction and she thought it through in a way to really, she did a mini revision. She used her imagination with her eyes open. This is another thing. You can imagine with eyes open. It's not just a closed-eyed activity. Okay? So you can imagine with thought how you would have preferred it to go. And that's what the woman did. And it gave her a sense of satisfaction. So it's just remembering to do it. It's just remembering to do it and putting the effort in to do it. Okay. Now, from the first time I read your search, I have longed to experience a vision. Since you have told us of the promise, this desire has been intensified. I want to tell you of my vision, which was a glorious answer to my prayer, but I am sure I would not have had this experience were it not for something that occurred 2 weeks ago. It was necessary for me to park my car some distance from the university building, where I was scheduled to conduct my class. As I left my car, I was conscious of the stillness about me. The street was completely deserted. No one was in sight. Suddenly, I heard the most frightful cursing voice. I looked toward the sound and I saw a man brandishing a cane, yelling between vile words, "I'll kill you, I will kill you." I continued on as he approached me, for at that moment I thought, now I can test what I have professed to believe. If I do believe we are one, the Father, this derelict, and I, no harm can come to me. At that moment, I had no fear. Instead of seeing a man coming towards me, I felt a light. He stopped yelling, dropped his cane, and walked quietly as we passed within less than a foot between us. Having tested my faith at that moment, everything about me had seemed more alive than before. Flowers brighter, trees greener. I have had a sense of peace and the oneness of life I have not known before. Last Friday, I drove to our country home. Nothing was unusual about the day or the evening. I worked on a manuscript and, not being tired, did not try to fall off to sleep until around 2 the following morning. Then I turned off the light and drifted into that floating sensation, not asleep, but drowsy, as I call it, half awake and half asleep. Often, while in this state, lovely, unknown faces float before me, but this morning, the experience was different. A perfect face of a child came before me in profile. Then it turned and smiled at me. It was glowing with light and seemed to fill my own head with light. I was aglow and excited and thought, this must be the Christos. But something within me, without sound, said, no, this is you. I feel I will never be the same again, and someday I may experience the promise. GB. Our dreams will all be realized from the time that we know that imagining creates reality and act. But imagination seeks from us something much deeper and more fundamental than creating things. Nothing less indeed than the recognition of its oneness with God, that what it does is in reality God himself doing it, and through man, who is all imagination. So, Lazlo, let's break up a bit of the reading.
All right. For example, what I wanted to express, like my point of view regarding needing someone or needing love, I think I have like a point of view regarding this, which I call it the selfish way, or the ultra selfish way, which is basically not needing, not needing anyone or anything rather than you. Basically being like completely self enough, completely like don't caring about anyone right than yourself and things like that. You know what I mean, right? Being completely independent in every single sense.
Okay.
To not give like to not depend or rely on anyone than yourself to prevent things like getting hurt or abandoned or things like that. What do you think about my point of view? Like say the ultimate selfish being
Well,
or compromising.
I think it's good to be self-sufficient. I do. I think it's, a journey to no longer looking to everyone else to meet your needs. Now, I know you're still quite young, Lazlo, so, when we don't, I mean, I'm not sure where you're up to now, but when we don't have jobs, we're dependent on parents. You might be studying, you might have started a job, but it takes a little while to become independent. So I
Yes.
think being independent and self-sufficient is great. And then it's having good people around us that, yes, you can ask for help or someone can help you, at different times, but that's more the exception than the rule, I would say. And that way you give people the greatest gift, is that you don't need from them like when we're a child. We need a lot more when we're children. So I think independence is a wonderful thing, and self-sufficiency, especially, I would say, around love. Money too.
For me, independency is more like a part of the life, a stage of life. Like
Yes.
eventually you will have to become independent eventually. And the sooner it is, the better. The sooner the better.
Well, it makes
Like
you feel better to be, when you're not dependent on people, there is a freedom that comes with that. It's a
yes.
wonderful thing.
And that's what I want to come up with because things like, for example, it's okay also to be. I also have to point out that I also want to take an uncompromising stance on things. Like, for example, when I see an unnecessarily complicated or deep situation, I simply turn back and leave. Like, nope, that doesn't come up with me. Like
Yeah.
so I guess, like, for example, when I see people arguing or talking about something that I know if I start talking about it, I'm gonna get mad, I'm gonna get bothered, I'm gonna get drained, I simply say nope. I simply push myself away from it.
Yeah.
Or step back.
I mean, I think sometimes, like if it's with people you live with or whatever, you got to have a conversation to a certain point. But if you're out in the world or you're online, you can really limit how much you get involved in, because I do see there's a lot of involvement in things that you don't really need to be involved in, like especially online, especially. People wind themselves up mentally and emotionally about politics, religion, vaccines, all sorts of issues around the world. Now, I understand. I'm not saying I don't I'm not interested in that stuff. But I think sitting in meditation and imagining the result you would prefer is a much better use of your time than going head to head debating with people you're never going to meet.
Yes, and that's why I also had recently taken a decision that I think is for the better. That I decided to stop with all my existential doubts, with my inner insecurities, and simply remain loyal to what I think is the best for me, to what I am grateful for, and
Well
no matter,
done.
yes, no matter if it's actually bad or something like that, because being against what I love or what I'm grateful to will make me
Mm,
an hypocrite, like a shameless hypocrite. And one of the things that I tolerate the least in my life is hypocrisy. So so that is why I decided to now stop
mm,
caring about if what I defend or what I support is bad for some people
mm.
or something like that. I decided to remain loyal, and even if it makes me, if what I support or I'm loyal to makes me desert a gruesome death like a fascist, I don't care anymore. I just wanted to. So it sounds like that, remaining loyal to what I believe,
Yeah. You go, and the
because
thing is, Lazlo, how old are you now?
21 years old.
Yeah. And when I met you, you were 19. And it's like you have learned a lot of stuff in that time, and you've calmed down so much mentally and emotionally. Like you're 21. Imagine when you're my age, if you keep learning, imagine how incredible your life can be through applying all that you're learning now. I mean, you've already got learned for 2 years. Like, imagine when you're 25, imagine when you're 30, what you will be able to do when you've harnessed your mind. Like, your generation is like, you have got such an advantage. You've got such an advantage because you really fell into this really early. So, that is one of the greatest gifts you've been given, is that this information, you found it or it found you at 19. It's profound. Like, it's almost, I mean, if you believe in source or not, that's being looked after, because you have had, I mean, you and I've discussed a lot of things you've been through, and you haven't had an easy time, but you've been given this amazing toolbox, an amazing toolbox. And now you know what's really great about you, Lazlo, is you have been persistent. And I know you've had a foot in the darkness sometimes, and I know you've still been trying to read and learn and listen. And that part of you is what will save you if you keep that alive. It is an amazing part of you. It's an amazing part of you, because you didn't go at 19, oh, I'm not interested in this, I just want to go and do gaming if you're into gaming, I'm not saying that's a bad thing if that's your thing, but it's like you didn't drop the ball and just go into a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make you grow and develop. You went straight for the bullseye into things that make you think about how the mind works, and think about, I've got anger, or I've got frustration, or I've got resentment. I want certain people that have done certain things to be hurt by this. But you're honest about it, and you're open to talking about it, and you are open to learning. And that, honestly, when people have got that, they fly. They fly.
Yes.
Because you're like a sponge that you don't, you know what it is, Lazlo, too? You don't think you know everything. You go, I don't know so much stuff, I'm trying to learn. You have got a natural humility, and you don't have the entitlement that we see a lot of in this day and age. And I will say, especially in your age group, you don't have that. That is fantastic that you, for some reason, that has been inbuilt in you to rise up and learn and use what you learn to improve your own life and to, you know, make your way around work, around money, around all sorts of things. So well done to you. For 2 years you haven't gone anywhere. You know, you've persisted for 2 years. So it's great. It's amazing.
Yes, like when they say, for example, if you have an issue or something you want to deal with or something, you need to get to the core of it, right?
Yeah.
The core of the problem or what you want. Go straight to the issue.
Yes.
And you know, I like what you're telling me, that I don't have self-entitlement, because
You don't.
Self-entitlement, selfishness, narcissism are things that I really hate also. People who think they are so right, people who think the world revolves around them or things like that. But and the worst part, that they are also severely hypocrite and shamelessly hypocrite, that makes you think that really really can piss you off, you know. And you know, because since I was a child, I was educated, let's say, in a very strong way, you know. You know, I have learned something like, you know, when you have sometimes, to humble someone, you need to beat them up enough for them to sit down, shut up, and learn that they are less than nothing to demand or say or condemn anything. And because, you know, because the strong education that I'm grateful for that I received, made me a humble person, made me an empath person, and made me learn that the world doesn't revolve around me and that doesn't owe me nothing.
Yeah. But you know what? That just tells me you're wise beyond your years, because a lot of people do think, and it's a natural progression when you come out of your teens and then you go into your early 20s, you just started your 20s, that we do think that things revolve around us. We do. It's just part of that being in that bracket. And you somehow already understand that. And I think you know, what you're learning is really, really, honestly, I can see such a change in you in 2 years. I really can.
Yes.
And so well done to you for persisting and trying to learn and concentrating. And I know it's been hard. I know, but you've kept at it. Your discipline and persistence is a force to be reckoned with. That's really fantastic.
Yes. And I know perfectly that maybe some of the things that I support or some of the things that are against or I hate or I criticize, I may look like an hypocrite. So I apologize in some ways if I sound like an hypocrite in some aspects. I know I'm aware of that. And also, could you edit that part on when you allow this, when I mentioned that certain group, that you know what I'm saying? You know, I don't want issue, right? You know, like like I said, I decided to stop feeling insecure or stop feeling like or brimming with existential doubts, and simply being like loyal to what I'm grateful for, what I am.
That's it.
Yes.
That's it. And you're getting better. You're getting better, and you're getting more your toolbox. You've got a good toolbox now and you're using it. So
Yes.
darling, I'm going to take Zakia's question because we've only got 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So good.
Can I say something last thing about pigs? Can I say it?
Last thing about what?
I want to say that I'm extremely grateful for being here, because every time I have a Zoom meeting involving you and these other beautiful people, I feel wonderful after that. And because I'm currently in a situation in my life where I feel like I don't have a way out, or I feel like because I'm currently in a situation where I feel like I don't know what to do, or I have no way out. I think coming here is great because I don't have anyone else to talk with. All right, that's it. Thank you so much.
No worries, darling. No worries.
Hi, Anya. I just want to say, listen, thank you. Great topic. I had to dial in really quickly. We was at a family event and my husband grabbed me and said, we've got to go because you said you've got to dial into this. So I've been having you on loudspeaker. So I'm home now. But I wanted to say thank you. Honestly, the topics you cover are just, honestly, they're always on point. And it's funny how there's such a, it's like it's an unfunny time that certain things get spoken about. It's really funny that, isn't it? And also, it's next time that you do arrange like the get together for the people in London, I will come and meet you. Maybe organise it in a more central location because Chelsea's a little bit way out. But that was a bit difficult time then, but definitely on another occasion. I liked a lot of the things that you said today. And speaking about myself, I have noticed changes even after I spoke with you. So when it comes to things like, it could be part of this topic. So for me, it's more related to the career side of things, work side of things. As you know, Anya, I spoke to you about that.
Yeah.
I've been able to speak my truth without feeling my own resentment or guilt when I'm talking to people. So say, for example, my manager, I'm not going to go all the way to Canary Wharf without having a pay rise for 2 years or getting a bonus from last year where everyone else did, and knowing that at the end of this contract I'm not going to be appraised or get any bonus. But I was honest enough to say I'm not gaining anything from this. So I tried to make it so that they understand. I've also appealed my performance rating, and I'm glad that I did, because it made me also realise my self-worth, right? And I've always been a performer that's a strong and a role model, which is considered quite high, where this time, because of the restructuring, they gave me a good rating, which is the lowest. And they used the restructuring as the excuse, which they're not allowed to. So I spoke my truth there. And then I was advised by one of the leaders to speak to HR to raise a case, and I did. And I basically said, ultimately that I don't think that was fair. That wasn't right. And I would like to know how my performance was. If it was a bad performance, please address it, because all the feedback that I got were excellent. So I'd like to know how does that warrant me a good? So I think when it comes to this topic that you've spoken about, for me, it's about knowing my worth, and also knowing my space and the environment that I have around me. So even though I'm working from home, I'm still got that work environment, it's all there in my energy field, like all around me. I'm looking at the screen. I know I give a good job and I do a fantastic job. So that is what's been happening since we spoke. And also the other thing is that my mentor, I've got a lovely mentor at HSBC, lovely lady, and she saw a position and she said, Zakia, this will actually transition you out of an EA role. So again, that's something, that's an opportunity that's come through, so I can apply myself for that. And basically for me, just to round it up and to kind of share it with everybody, is not to give up, or never, ever give up, and always stay true to yourself and your power, because that is really where you nourish your own soul. And if other people aren't doing that for you, and we sometimes look outside to fill our needs, then do it for yourself, and do it by any means, whatever means, whatever to you. Even if it is popping outside and getting your favorite bar of chocolate, or like for me, getting my eyebrows done or my hair or something. It's something that you're giving back to yourself. And I think that's, and then start walking back in our power a little bit. And sometimes we don't need a reason to go and do something nice for ourselves. We shouldn't have to find a reason to do it. We should just, it should come part of our daily routine. So I just wanted to share that, really. But honestly,
Nice.
Anya, our calls, and I'm glad that you're feeling better now, because I know you couldn't do the last one. So I'm really grateful for this.
Oh, my pleasure.
By the way, thank you for sending those books.
Oh, good. You got them. Great.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I'm one of these people that I don't read a book from like cover to cover. I always see things and they stand out, and I start reading. like bits and pieces from different pages, or some of your chapters might just jump out at me, and then I'll like to read bits and pieces of that. But I also noticed something today. I looked at my calendar on my phone. So it's got like the whole year, and it's June the 4th. And I thought, oh my goodness, like for the last 6 months, what have I really achieved? Like literally, like what have I achieved? I can't use obstacles to say that I couldn't achieve that because of this, or because of my mum, or I wasn't well, or blah, blah, blah. Because we go through that and then we come out of it. But it did make me think, I've only got 6 months left now for this year. Like, what am I going to get out of this? What, what do I want? What do I want to achieve? So it does make you think. And when I looked at it today, that was a really powerful vision. Really powerful.
Excellent. It is. I didn't even think of that, Zakia. We're 6 months in. We're going into the 6th month.
So it made me think, well, what have I achieved? Okay, I've done this, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I've had that obstacle, but I came, you've got to think. And I also, there's a call that I go on Saturdays, and it's with this billionaire called Rami El-Batrawi, and it's part of the Napoleon Hill group. And I really like this. Now, I wasn't able to go on a call yesterday, but last Saturday, the presenter, Troy Chadwick, said a very powerful statement. Rami has 24 hours, just like the rest of you. And it hit home, because it made me think, damn, this guy just acquired a hotel in Guyana for $6.5 million or whatever it was. And it's true. Everyone, we're all given 24 hours. You have, I have, everyone in this world. But what are we to use our 24 hours with? What are we choosing to do? It made me realize that I like to be a person that's kind of free. I love that feeling of freedom and, freeness and not being weighed down. I don't like the feeling stuck. I hate that, because that's where you come in, and we're always using you to get unstuck. But that is what I don't like that. And I sometimes do see most people spend more time trying to work out how they got stuck, becoming unstuck, rather than really enjoying the thought of what it's like, that free and I didn't want to spend most of my time being in that stuck mode. I don't like that, so I refuse to think like that.
Good stuff. Progress. You look good. You look bouncy and back to your own old natural self.
Yeah, it's lovely. But it'll be lovely to see you and the others. But if you do arrange something and it's more sort of the central London, then that's going to be really nice, and it'll be easy for me to get to, because I'd love to see you.
Cool. And I'll keep it in mind.
I love these calls. I get so much
good
energy. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Zakia. My pleasure. And thank you for sharing. Well, where you're up to is a success story in the making. It's hatching. So it's wonderful. I love hearing all of you just use all of this, whether it's Neville or self-love, and just really break free of things that have bothered you for a long time, or where you felt not valued or not respected, or whatever it is, in the workplace, in relationships, all of this, in your countries, in your communities, in your families, all sorts of areas where we've all got some work to do. So it's so, so great. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Zakia, for your sharing. If anybody wants to just unmute and say goodbye, and then we will conclude. My pleasure. My pleasure, everybody.
I'm grateful with you for meeting you and everyone here.
Good stuff.
Bye,
everyone. Hugs.
Thank you, Agnes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.